for the invitation of giving me the opportunity to say something to present something of my work. My presentation will be a little bit different, I suppose, than the other ones, because I'm also talking about monitoring, but I'm talking about monitoring of what people are saying and what people are wish, the preference of people. So my presentation has this following overview. I will give first a short introduction, then I'll talk a little bit about the application we have built to find out what kind of wishes and preference people have. Finally, a short overview of some results, and I will end up with the conclusions. So it's about monitoring about preferences of certain landscapes and land types, and a recent study, a European study, it's just released. They made an inventory of the state of the art of some habitats, and of course habitats not the same as landscape, but there are some interesting outcomes, and they show that on European scale, the mares and bogs are a threatened group of habitats in Europe, and also natural grasslands, freshwaters, and coastal habitats. They are in danger. It's something we have to keep in mind, and they give also some kinds of conclusion of how it will happen. And we see in Europe a landscape which is fragmented, and there's undergoing a kind of an overall loss, and that's because of a lot of areas are abandoned in Europe. There are abandonment of areas, and that maybe that can that will change kind of a loss of identity. There are also other developments which have a relation to landscape. That's the enormous urban encroachment. It's taking over the older landscapes. Also the whole idea of the industry of agricultural industry is directly have an effect on the preservation of landscape. We see a disappearance of many small farmers. So all kinds of developments are related to a certain loss of certain landscape types, and well, the landscape requires care, and it's important to keep a certain landscape, but if you want to care for this landscape, well, there has to be some kind of money in those areas, in those mostly rural areas. And what we see in a lot of studies we've done, and in Europe, and also a lot of policymakers, they think, well, maybe tourism is the solution for all those abandonment of and loss of the rural landscape. Because tourism is one of the biggest sectors in the world. It's growing every year, even in the last few years it's still growing. And it delivers a lot of employment, a lot of social, economic and cultural prosperity. And also tourism is capable to conserve certain landscapes which are very useful and very beautiful to keep it. But of course, as Eric also said, there are also some dangers in tourism development. Sometimes it's harming the same environment our people are attracting to, as we said, in the coastal areas. And sometimes conflicts can arise. We see it all the times during the economic value and the benefits of the economic value and the concern of preservation of the environment. So tourism can be a solution, but you have to keep in mind how you can deal with it. But if you if you're looking for a solution to do something with tourism in preserving the landscape, it's you have to realize that tourism is kind of a special sector, and it's changing a lot, and tourists are changing a lot, and sometimes they have knowledge about landscapes, and sometimes, most of the times, they don't have knowledge about landscapes. And if you want to plan the landscape using tourism, you need to know something about the tourist, about the preferences of the tourist. And most of the time we see all kinds of monitoring about the physical aspects of the landscape, but not so much about the preference of the tourist of today. So that knowledge of what people like or dislike is very important in the planning of the areas. So the central question is, how can we collect landscape preferences data of the consumers, tourists, on a European scale without using traditional inquiries, which are very costly? Most of the time we do it, I did it myself also, a lot of inquiries, surveys, and they are very costly. And maybe there are alternative ways to collecting the preferences. So we started a few years ago to build a website, and we thought, well, we have a lot of data, a lot of GIS data in Wageningen, and we use them for research purposes, but maybe we can do more with that. Maybe we can give something of the data back to the people. And so we thought, well, maybe, and also in surveys, we always ask people, we never give something back. So we thought maybe we have to change that. We're giving something and we get something out of the people, and maybe that's an alternative way of doing research. So we started to build a website, the project was called eScape, Electronic Information System for Landscape Preferences. And the central part is the website, and we have a Dutch version for the Dutch people, it's called daarmoetikzijn.nl. We started in 2010, and we have already 40,000 unique visitors, 40,000. And maybe we thought in 2012, maybe we can do the same for Europe, because we have a lot of GIS data on the European scale. So what we did, we built a website and we asked the people to define their beautiful landscape they prefer. So if they are going for a holiday, what kind of landscape do you prefer, and what is important in the decision making if you are going for a holiday? And of course we know from research that the most important thing for today is safety. But next, climate is very important. Climate figures very important. Also the cost and the accommodation. But landscapes are also in a lot of surveys, comes in the top 5 or top 10 of important issues in the decision making. So we asked the people, make your own ideal landscape, and using all kinds of land use types like forest, wetlands, moors, all those land use types. And imagine an area, your destination tourist area of about 5 by 5 kilometers, where you can have a nice walk or cycle in that area, and how much of in that area has to be some kind of land use type. What's the recommendation where to go to for your next holiday in Europe? So it's a kind of holiday planner. So, but in the same time, we save all those preferences, and especially I think that could be important for the landscape observatory, especially when we look at the preference of the land use. But we also asked the people, how attractive is the landscape in your own environment where you live? That's also a very nice question for monitoring. So the policy makers can do a lot with those data. They can explore the consequences of their decisions, and maybe they can build new nature according to the preferences of the tourists they want to attract. So and also it's nice to stimulate tourism in Europe also. So now some results. We started in 2012 with the website myplacetobe.eu, and we have already 11,000 unique visitors. Most are female, but 45 our visitors are male. So it's not an inquiry for us. It's a website, but because we are a research institute, we ask a little bit of the background of the visitors. So we ask for gender, age, we know the zip code, and also we ask how like or dislike the landscape in their own environment. It's dominated by the Dutch, the results yet. As you can see, about 77% is from the Netherlands, but also all from Belgium. There we have a lot of visitors, United Kingdom, France, and they come all over the world. So when we look at the average, then we see mountains and hills are the most preferred ones, and we also ask for what kind of holiday type they prefer. And we see that on average the active holiday, doing something, and that's important for landscape, is the most preferred one, but also beaches and city trips. And we see a little bit differences between the countries. I have chosen the 5 countries with the most visitors, and especially the Germans, they are have more preference for more the active holidays. The next thing which I want to present is what kind of type of land use you prefer in your favorite holiday destination. And the slide stands on normally on indifference, but you can choose between I don't want that land use type in my destination, or I want something of it. And when we see on average that forest is the most preferred land use type of the visitors of the website My Place to Be, but also small villages. So it's not only about landscape, it's also about culture. Beaches, dunes and sands are very preferred, also natural grasslands. And we see at the list, we can conclude that people really prefer some kind of a diversity of land use. And that's very important to keep in mind, to have some kind of diversity. Now, what's the average of what people want? And then we have almost the same list. In the ideal holiday destination, that has to be, on average, almost 25% has to be used for forest. And there's no big difference between the visitors from the several countries. Also for beaches and dunes and sand, there are not so many differences. But for villages, there are. People from Belgium have more preference for some kind of villages, small villages, than people from Germany and France. And so you see the list. The red ones are more preferred, and the yellow one are less preferred. And a little bit strange is the industry, because it's not only about nice elements. Of sometimes there are also some not so nice elements, and it's important to know also the preference of those not so nice elements like industry. And it's rather strange that the people from the United Kingdom have a high percentage of preference for industry. I don't know why that is. Probably it's some kind of people is doing something for gaming or so. I don't know.
I'll tell you later.
Yeah, I hope so. So the last result I want to present to you is, and it's also, I think it's important also for using it for monitoring preferences of the landscape of where people live. And we ask how attractive do you find the landscape where you're living in. And we can see here the outcomes. And well, people from Spain, they're lucky because a lot of people from Spain, they really like the landscape in the surrounding area. But Belgium, sorry, it's not so good. And the Netherlands are a little bit in between. And for Landschap NL, we did a survey of the Dutch version of the 40,000 visitors who are using daarmoetikzijn.nl, and we see that the average is declining for the last, well, from 2010 till now. It's declining, and it's now even below 6. So people are worried about the state of the landscape we are living in. Something we have to keep in mind. So my conclusion is, well, I think it's the first European database. It's still growing, it's still open, and it's dominated by the Dutch. So I want to see all the international audience tell it in your country and visit the website so we can collect more data. But I think it's nice to have a European database with all those preferences, and we can do all kinds of recommendation on every geographical scale. And when we come back to the threatened land use, the maars and bogs are not very preferred landscape for tourism use. Coastal areas, of course, but also freshwater and also natural grasslands, they are preferred, but they are also very vulnerable. And heathlands and forests are very preferred by the tourist, and they have a relative low proportion of threatening. So for the recommendation to stimulate tourism, I think you have to focus on those areas of forests and heathlands than but the other areas which are very preferred are, well, you have to keep in mind, you have to make tailor-made solutions, especially in the coastal areas and natural grasslands. And if you have an area with a lot of scrubs and especially vegetated landscape, I don't think tourism will be the solution for preserving the landscapes. So I want to finish my presentation with a promotion talk. So please go and visit the website myplacetobe.eu and tell us what you like for kind of landscapes, and tell it in your own country, and I hope we get more data out of it. So thank you for listening.